I just got back from casting my vote in the Ohio Republican primary. It was funny, I saw my own name on the ballot, but the Republican primary for U.S. President is over. Donald Trump has my support, and he had my vote today. I also voted for Bernie Moreno for U.S. Senate. And I think that's really interesting, not just here in Ohio, but across the country. Settling an open question about the future of the Republican Party. Are we going the way of the past, or are we going the way of the future? Putting the citizens of this country ahead of anybody else. That's the job of elected leaders in this country. Our obligation is to the citizens of this nation, not another one. And so I hope Bernie Moreno is the person to put Sherrod Brown out of a job and be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Ohio. But I also hope that that's a leading indicator of what's to come, not just in the Republican Party, but across this country, and hopefully a landslide this November. America First is about all Americans, not just people of one skin color or one political party. It's bigger than that. And the more we see it that way, the more successful we're going to be.
You know what you guys don't talk about? Carrie is a female going into the United States Senator. If she were a Democrat, she would be frowned as, oh my gosh, we need more women there. I would be the first South American-born senator, first Hispanic elected statewide. If I were running as a Democrat, oh my God, the headlines would be Hispanic immigrant Bernie Moreno with compelling life story, sacrifices everything to save America. Instead, because I'm a conservative that supports President Trump, I'm a Trump-backed MAGA extremist. This is a narrative issue. And what we are is we're the party of the future. We're the party that's going to rebuild the middle class in this country. And what this movement represents is that that's who we are. We are not the party of the elites and big business. Ironically, the Democrats are the party of discrimination. They don't just fight for businesses. They fight for big business, big government, big corporations, big tech, big academia. We're the party of the working class. We're the party that's going to make certain that my father-in-law's life can be replicated. Goes to high school, goes to work at U.S. Steel, which, by the way, also a bloodbath that happened in the steel industry. And now that company's almost gone. That's what we're about. We're the future of the party. Democrats are scared to death because we're going to win the Hispanic vote, and we're going to make enormous inroads in the black community, which is a huge threat to the Democrat Party.
All right, guys, so I try not to speculate too much about who Trump is going to pick as his vice president because, quite honestly, I don't think it's a question that he needs to answer right now. I think that now that the primary is officially over and Nikki Haley is out of the race, he needs to evaluate the results of the primary and make the best pick based off the results of the primary. Now, what did the primary tell us about Trump and the base and how he should probably think about selecting his VP pick? Well, for the most part, what it told us is that when it comes to Trump's support among the base, that is pretty much locked up, okay? And what he's really working for now is the moderates and the independents that are on the fence about voting for Trump. And I think that is going to be the key when it comes to picking a VP, okay? How does it expand the base? Because Trump already has the base, okay? So he doesn't really need to pick a guy that is going to double and triple down on a base that he already has. He probably should think about picking somebody that's not unacceptable, but can also expand the base, potentially bring in new voters, okay? I mean, that is the thought process. That's always kind of been the thought process of how presidential candidates pick their VP. Like, for example, in 2016, the reason why Mike Pence was the guy is because the thought process was that Trump is not a traditional Republican conservative. So he's going to have some issues with the more religious evangelical base of the Republican Party. So they basically picked a guy that from a social perspective is to the right of Trump in Mike Pence in order to solidify that base. However, it's kind of funny because I feel like Trump probably has stronger support among evangelicals than somebody like Mike Pence. Again, that's kind of the irony of that pick. And the reasoning behind it, but that's always kind of how it is, okay? And in 2020, you saw Joe Biden, he was seen as the more conservative Democrat, and Kamala Harris being the most liberal senator, who also allegedly is a so-called woman of color. That was the balancing act for Democrats in their ticket, okay? So that is the traditional way of thinking. Will Trump go along with that traditional way of thinking? Who knows? But we do have a news report from Bloomberg that signals that MAGA favorite Vivek Ramaswamy is out of the running for VP. Now, this is just a news report. This is just rumor and speculation. And I really want to emphasize that because I personally don't think that this report makes much sense at all. But it is something I think is worth talking about and revisiting every now and then, especially considering how, again, the primary is over. And now it is getting to the point where people are going to be wondering who Trump is going to pick for VP. I mean, people are talking about RFK Jr. and his pick for VP. So with that being said, I actually want to go ahead and play this news clip from Fox News, and then we're going to talk about it.
Stakes. Bloomberg reporting the former president has told Vivek Ramaswamy he will not tap him for that particular job, though he is reportedly in contention for DHS secretary. Bloomberg says Kevin McCarthy is in the running for chief of staff. No word on whether he wants that job. And for attorney general, Senators Mike Lee and Ted Cruz.
Yeah, so, here's my thing. I think that this is BS for the most part, right? But let's assume that it's legit. I don't think that Vivek and the Department of Homeland Security secretary position would be the best pick for him, okay? But that's not even to say that VP would be the best pick for him, because I think that, quite honestly, while I think is very qualified to be VP, and I think he would be an amazing VP, VP really is a position where you are more of a figurehead, more so than somebody that gets things done, unless the president decides that he's going to make that the job of the VP, okay? I mean, the VP is only as powerful as the president makes the VP, okay? Now, I have no clue in regards to what Trump is thinking about who he wants to be in his VP position, but the thought process when it comes to Trump and his pick is that, well, he's going to want a guy in that position that's not going to outshine him, okay? That's going to be able to stump for the Trump administration, to be able to market the policies of the Trump administration, that's going to be able to handle the media and to do all the things that, the VP traditionally does, which is really to be a cheerleader for the president, but also be qualified to take over, okay? I mean, that's probably the number one thing, is somebody that's qualified to be president. Now, again, that's where it becomes very tricky for Trump, because the base is going to want somebody in that spot that is MAGA, okay? The base does not want an establishment person in that spot, because if Trump dies or they try to assassinate him, which, could possibly happen, right? I wouldn't put anything past these individuals. Again, especially, if they know that if they take out Trump, the next in line is going to be a part of the establishment. Yeah, a lot of people thinking that, okay, well, you got to pick somebody that's going to push the America First agenda, okay? That's not going to be an establishment Republican, because that's why Trump is popular. That is the reason why MAGA has taken over the Republican Party, is because we don't want those old guys anymore, right? But again, there's a balancing act, because at the same time, okay, the establishment Republicans or the old guard still makes up a significant portion of the party, enough that it actually really matters, okay? And you also have to get those moderates and independents, okay, in the sense that you do have some of those people that are kind of more towards the middle, that are more attracted to the establishment, the old neocons, the Nikki Haley's of the world, right? That's the way you got to think about it, the Nikki Haley's. And then you got those people that are still, independent, more moderate leaning, but they are attracted to MAGA, okay? They do like, what MAGA brings to the table from an anti-establishment standpoint, especially when you talk about, fighting wars overseas, okay? And how, we want to move away from that, okay? So, again, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be a balancing act. But when it comes to Vivek, I don't think the DHS position is the best position for him if he's not going to be VP. I actually think the best position for Vivek would be Treasury Secretary. And the reason why I say that is because Vivek has a economics and finance background, okay? I mean, the guy runs an asset management company. Even when he was doing pharmaceuticals, he wasn't necessarily the guy creating the drugs as much as he was the guy financing the development of the drugs, okay? He's a financer. He's a math guy. He's a finance guy. He's an economics guy, more so than anything, okay? And I've heard, Vivek's takes on the Fed and how we need to reform the Fed, okay? And I think that he would be the perfect person to do that. And I think that quite honestly would be the position that he's most qualified for, okay? That's the position that I would like to see him in if he's not VP.
Thank you and welcome. I'm going to throw it back to the United States and talk a little bit about how you feel about the growing differential between the top 1% and the middle class in the U.S. and how you plan on addressing it in your presidency.
Yeah, great question. And to tell you the truth, I don't feel great about it. A lot of this is the product of the Federal Reserve, actually. It seems like a technical subject a lot of people don't like to talk about. I think this is fundamental. So the Federal Reserve has, since the late 90s, taken on the role of playing effectively God for the financial system. For a lot of that period, raining money from on high like manna from heaven. We've been skiing on artificial snow, and it's really flowed down through the top 1%. A friend of mine actually has a funny expression, but I'll share it with you. He says, if you're a nurse, you'll go home with some extra latex gloves. If you're a teacher, you might go home with some extra pencils. If you're a banker, you go home with a few extra dollars. And that's the way it's worked through the Federal Reserve System. Trickle-down economics, I believe, does work when it's driven by gains in the real economy, but it doesn't work when it's created by artificial paper wealth generated by Fed Reserve policies. So I'd put the Fed back in its place. The reason real wage growth has not gone up for the bottom 99% adjusted for inflation, it's been flat. The reason why is the Federal Reserve has treated wage growth as though it's a leading indicator of inflation and tried to tamp it down like a game of whack-a-mole for the last 25 years. So you get what you pay for. My view is I'll put the Fed back in its place. A single mandate for the U.S. Fed. What is that? Dollar stability. Peg the dollar to commodities. That ties the hands of our government. That's a good thing. We've had our greatest GDP growth in this country before we left the gold standard. I think that's telling. So when the dollar is stable, that's how you actually help the bottom 99% in this country. That's how you see real wage growth. And I want people to understand, you hear a lot of tales, mythology, I would say, about the current economy. Let's make it simple. What's going on? Prices are going up. Interest rates, including mortgage rates to buy your home, are going up. But wages have remained flat. And so I'm not going to be the person who comes in here and tells you. And some people will say, am I too pessimistic at times? I'm a realist. I'm not going to tell you the American dream is alive and well right now. It is not. It's alive and hanging on for life support. But I believe it can be. And I do think it's going to take now more than ever a CEO in the White House, somebody with fresh legs, somebody, I believe, from the next generation to look at this differently, apply some basic economic common sense, and that starts with reform of the Federal Reserve. So thank you for that question, and welcome to the Republican side.
Let me ask you, Mr. Rob.
Yeah, and the perfect position to do that would be Treasury Secretary. Okay, so I personally think that's the best position for Vivek, considering his background. I mean, again, he is a finance guy over everything else. But the thought process, at least from the Bloomberg article, is that, Vivek, being the DHS guy, he can implement Trump's border policies, which, Democrats going to cry about. He can do it as a child of immigrants and as a brown man, and they won't be able to boo-hoo whine and cry racism because Vivek is doing it, right? I don't think that that's good reasoning, okay, to pick somebody for a position like that, right? I think that you need to go with the most qualified person. I think the Republican Party should try not to flirt too much with identity politics, okay? We shouldn't be completely like the left when it comes to these issues. We need to put people in positions that they're most qualified for, and I think that that is really what I want to see when it comes to Trump's cabinet, to be quite honest with you. So let's move forward.
Bloomberg piece says the former president has cooled on Senator Katie Britt, but is impressed by former rival Doug Burgum and may tap him to lead the transition if he wins. And Doug Burgum is a very
drapes, by the way. It's
competent executive.
Burgum, yeah. You and I have talked about him and what he's done
very much.
His private life. And he brings a business mentality.
My friend who worked with him at Microsoft said he would have voted for him in a second for president.
Is that right?
He's really, really that good. There's news on possible vice presidential picks.
Oh, what you got there?
This is again, all rumors. Tim Scott, Congressman Byron Donalds, Governor Kristi Noem, and Tulsi Gabbard continues to be on that
probably double
list,
that list.
apparently. I don't know who came up with that list.
Maybe triple that list, too, right now.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah, I think that this list is low-key BS, right? I'm not saying that any of these people are not on the list. I just think that the list is longer. I don't see why Trump would drop any type of rumors or make any decisions in regards to who he wants to be VP or rule anybody out at this point. Considering how it's still early, he doesn't have to make a pick yet. The primary is not officially over yet. But if this is Trump's VP shortlist, let's assume that it's just this. some people may like this, some people may not. Now, for me personally, what you have here, the way I like to look at it is you got two traditional kind of conservatives, okay, Tim Scott and Kristi Noem, and then you got Byron Donalds, who's MAGA, and then you got Tulsi Gabbard, who is basically an independent, a former Democrat. She's the wild card, and I've been saying for a long time that Tulsi is a wild card, that if you're talking about trying to attract those independent voters, right, those disaffected Democrats, those people that are not on board with more wars, okay? They're kind of anti-establishment, anti-corruption. If you are desperate to get those people, right? If you really want to get those people, Tulsi Gabbard would be the pick, right? I think Tulsi Gabbard would probably be the best pick if you're talking about bringing on independents, okay? Now, I'm not saying that she should be the pick. I'm just saying if that's Trump's number one focus, then that would be the pick, okay? I mean, you could also say she's a so-called woman of color, okay? She's probably going to help you out a little bit on the abortion issue, which is going to be a big issue. If that's your main goal, then she's the pick. If you want a traditional conservative, like a Tim Scott or Kristi Noem, to try to shore up the base, okay, the traditional conservative base, then that's your pick, right? And then you got Byron Donalds, who, in my opinion, is intriguing, right? He's the guy that, if Trump is going to pick from this list, I will be the most excited about him, because Byron Donalds, in my opinion, has everything that you look for in a VP outside of probably the experience that you want, because he's been a representative in the House, but he hasn't been there that long. And I'm not sure if he has enough leadership experience yet to be the most qualified individual. But when you're talking about dealing with the mainstream liberal media and also promoting / marketing the policies of the Trump administration, I think he would do a better job of doing that than anybody on this list. And the reason why is because I've heard Byron Donalds take on the media time and time and time again. He's not afraid to go on their platforms to talk about the Republican agenda, to talk about the America First agenda. There's no doubt in my mind that he is the best at that, right? He is one of the best at that. In fact, I've criticized the Republicans a lot in Congress when it comes to their failures to market their solutions. But Byron Donalds has been one of the very few Republicans that do come out here and always talk about the legislation that they're trying to pass, what they're trying to do in Congress in order to push the America First agenda, what they're trying to do for the people. So, if this is the list, right? I personally, if I'm trying to get those independents, those former Democrats, so I'm really trying to expand the base the most, if that's the thought process, then Tulsi would probably be the pick. However, if I'm going with the person I think that would be the best VP, okay, the person that ultimately would push the America First agenda, after I leave office, or if something happens, that would be great at marketing my policies, I would probably go with Byron Donalds. Even though he's lacking the experience, I would probably go with him for all those other characteristics that I think are important when it comes to the VP pick. Tim Scott and Kristi Noem, they don't really excite me that much, right? Tim Scott's a nice guy, but he's basically Nikki Haley with a bald head and black, right, and a penis, okay? And Kristi Noem is, again, she's okay, right? I mean, I'm not going to be mad if Trump picks her, but again, I'm not particularly too excited about her considering some of the things that she's done in her state that I'm not necessarily a fan of. But hey, if I had to guess, I don't think he's picking any of these people, right? To be quite honest with you, he might end up picking somebody way out of left field, like a Doug Burgum, right? For example, right? Wouldn't be surprised if he's the guy, right? Somebody like him. He might pick somebody like that. I don't know, but I think that it probably doesn't make too much sense to put too much stock in this report. This is not the first time we've heard that Vivek has been ruled out. Okay, this could be a curveball to the establishment to try to put this out here so that, he does announce his pick, people aren't expecting, who is going to be. Like, we don't really know. Again, you really don't know at this point. So I wouldn't put much stock in this. I think that this is just rumors, but it is fun to talk about it. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.